Hello, and welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. Pleased to have with me back on the show once again, Autumn Edwards. Welcome to the show, Autumn.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yes, and we are back with our part two of catching up on 2024 movies. I started to realize around the beginning of August that there's a lot of movies from 2024 I still hadn't seen that were getting good reviews or interesting reviews at least. And here we are coming into Oscar season in September and October, where we're going to be flooded with hopefully amazing movies for award season. So I asked Autumn if we could do a few episodes catching up on the movies that got pretty good reviews from the first half of the year. So here we are. And we're going to talk about our first movie. Haha. Well, I'll say some people gave some of these movies good reviews, but not necessarily Autumn and I.
hmm
Alien Romulus is our first movie, directed by Fede Álvarez. While scavenging the deep ends of a derelict space station, a group of young adult space colonists come face to face with, guess what? The aliens. I know it's a shock. You didn't know what kind of movie you were getting yourself into. For those who know the Alien series, this movie chronologically sort of is supposed to fall between Alien, the first film, and Aliens, directed by James Cameron, and kind of the time continuum of the Alien series. Not that it really matters because this movie is a hot mess. This is a one-star movie. I'm going to say it right off the bat. The fact it's got 80% on Rotten Tomatoes shows you how much people have drank the Kool-Aid. That is the what I call the IP corporate sludge that's being jammed down our throats in 2024. What we have here is some not bad character pieces in terms of the aliens. They look pretty good. I think they spent all their time on that. We have a script that is basically a big nothing, that all it does is regurgitate lines and thoughts and ideas from the earlier films. And a bunch of actors who are basically given nothing to do, nothing to say, and are interesting to look at, including the lead, Kayleen Spaney, who we've seen in other movies like Civil War and Priscilla. And either she is either miscast or she is just not someone that can hold the screen. She's not a Sigourney Weaver. Heck, she's not even a Winona Ryder in Alien Resurrection. Probably the standout in terms of the actors for here was David Johnson, who plays the android, who is a British actor who was in a much better movie that I'll plug called Rye Lane. Really good rom com, by the way, from Britain, and that's his other credit that I recognized. So I know now Autumn has seen all the Alien movies and a lot more than me. So I'm going to let her take it from here.
Yeah, I also didn't care for this one. Prior to this one, there had not been a single Alien movie that I didn't like. I'm not super critical, I guess, with the Alien movies generally, because I love my big alien friends. It's always fun to hang out with the xenomorphs and, see the acid blood go everywhere and shoot them and stuff or whatever. But this one was just a really big letdown for me. I thought it looked bad. I thought it was poorly written. I thought the acting was nothing to write home about. There were few to no positive points for me, quite frankly. I think I gave it like a 1.5 just because again, I'm a sucker for aliens, so I can't completely hate anything related to that. But that's because I drank some of the Kool-Aid, and I'm happy to admit that. It just makes me really sad that we, canceled Ridley Scott's David trilogy for this because while that one wasn't perfect, it was at least reaching for new things. Like it was trying something different with the series, whereas this one is the worst kind of, for the fans movie. It
Mhm.
really is just a retread of everything that came before it, dumbed down and like retooled in a worse way. I just, like you said, I couldn't think of many positive points. I think the best character in there was the android. Um, I thought that,
Named Andy, by the way, which is
Andy the
super
android.
original.
I know. I couldn't believe that. I was like, seriously? I rolled my eyes. But I also thought, like, what are the attractions of the Alien franchise for me? Obviously, the alien, obviously, like, strong women, and obviously, like, great production design and stuff. Here, it's so clear that they're just like trying to make another Sigourney Weaver out of Kaylee Spaney. And like you said, it just doesn't work. I don't know why. She just doesn't seem to have whatever you need to like, just pull you on the screen. She doesn't have the gravitas that Sigourney Weaver has. I thought the aliens also looked worse than they do in a lot of the other films. Fede was going around bragging about how so much of it is practical, but to me, it just so much of it looked cheap and bad. I was astounded, like the way it looked like, a video game, the way the camera is just like floating around. There's a lot of shallow depth of field, and like the surroundings just really lack a lot of detail. I talk about the production design in Alien, which is like some of the best in cinema. And this just had nothing. Like they had so many opportunities to show it off. I mean, I think of the scenes where they're walking through that long hallway and there's like it's all supposed to be covered with, alien bits and like bits of other living creatures like, baked into the wall and everything like that. But it's all shown in such little detail and they're just little inserts, like quick 3-second shot inserts
Right.
of a bunch of random people stuck in the wall, and it never feels like anything cohesive. You compare that to Aliens by James Cameron, and like that whole colony felt like a very lived in, real place. It felt concrete, like you could reach out and touch everything, and like all the walls, were covered and rendered in great detail. I don't know. It just lacked a tactility, I felt.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the shallow depth of field is a good thing to bring up because, and then the quick cutting. I do have to rant a little bit more on writing though, because I agree with you that the Alien series is all the things you said, and that's why people look forward to. But the first two films in particular, uh, the writing is good. The characters are
Hmm.
well written. They have interesting, memorable lines. All this movie does is take those same lines. They literally take some of the same lines out of the first movies. They can't come up with any memorable dialogue on their own for the characters to say. Even from her getting suited up from the end to some one of the more famous lines that I can't say because we're on prime time TV, like some of the exact lines are ripped off from the first and second movie. It reminds me when they regurgitated the new Star Trek movies, and my dad, who's a huge Trekkie, loves the Star Trek movies. But when they just started redoing the old ones, like they just redid Wrath of Khan essentially again, and he said, "Well, why are we doing this? We have the whole universe to explore. Why not tell a new story?" And that's what I thought I was missing here,
Yeah. There's
in
also a
extremes.
very egregious choice made
Hmm.
with the villain here and how they bring him to life very literally. It's really I just find it hard to forgive. I'm just gonna spoil it now because I think it's so bad. They bring Ian Holm back from the dead, and they reanimate him as an android again, and it just looks terrible too. I think
Yeah,
it's bizarre. They have not crossed the uncanny valley. It just feels weird every time his face is on screen. And I
yeah,
think again, it's just such an uninspired choice that like again, we're just gonna have to bring back one of the old great villains because we can't
hmm,
come up with anything on our own. Like you said,
yeah.
it's
So
just
total lack
very
of imagination.
unoriginal.
And I think what they
Yeah.
did to Ian Holm, honestly, it probably would have been a two-star movie if they hadn't done that. But I agree with you. I thought it was disgusting. I thought maybe he was just going to be on the second for a few screen for a few seconds as an AI version of him, but he actually becomes the actual villain again, like he was an alien as Rook. So I thought you can't even bring back an original villain. There's no alive actors in the whole world you could have found. So
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
just what a just complete disappointment.
And the
So
lack of character carries through across everything, like their surroundings, not just the ship, but the planet that they come from is just the most uninspired. Like, oh, yes, we get it. Capitalism is bad, and, they're under the boot of the Weyland-Yutani Corps and blah, 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 blah. But it's just like almost comical the way they get these points across. It really feels almost condescending. They literally live on a planet that has 0 hours of daylight and they slave away their lives. And like right when they have finally reached, the limit of their agreement, oh, just kidding. We add, however many more thousands of hours to their contract. And it's like, okay, look, I don't know. I feel like all the previous ones, they did that capitalist criticism much better. It was much more fluidly integrated. It was much more like, you know, nuanced in many ways too. I just was very, very disappointed by like everything about this film.
Yeah, very disappointing. Well, let's move on to our next one, which I hope is less disappointing. I think that's yours.
Yeah. Yeah, so the next one is The Beast, directed by Bertrand Bonello. So The Beast is it's a very fun one. It's hard to summarize, but it's basically the story of a young woman played by Leah Seydoux, who this is in the future. She decides to purify her DNA, which allows her to like rid herself of strong emotions. And she does this so that she can be considered for a job, because a lot of jobs now have this requirement where you can't have any affect, you can't have, any reactions or strong emotions to things because it's all about efficiency and optimization. It's kind of a dark look at where we're heading with automating everything, including being a human. But the process of purifying her DNA involves her immersing herself in her past lives and reliving portions of them. And so she goes through several lengthy experiences and each time runs into George McKay, who's playing a character named Lewis. And they meet in a lot of fun locations. They meet in clubs. There's Paris that's now flooded and partially underwater, like Venice. They meet in just like the present day and more. And I just thought it was a really, really formally interesting movie for sure. Like the way that it's cut and the way that we shift through the different timelines. And there's, a lot of the time not any clear delineation of like what comes first, what comes after it. Really plays with, the time aspect of it. And I also just thought it was a great exploration of like anxiety. And that's
Fear.
spoiler alert, that is the beast. And the way they set that up and the very, opening scene I thought was brilliant. The way it just foreshadows the entire film.
Mhm.
So, what did you think?
I love this movie. This is definitely a short list for, one of my for my top 10 list of the year, which is saying something because actually I've only seen one other film by this director. He's actually made quite a few. And Nocturama, which is a previous film of his that was highly acclaimed from 2016, I didn't love, and every critic loved it. So I was a little worried going into this one, but I liked this one a lot, in part because of the amazing central performance by Lea Seydoux, who's I just think one of our great young actors, period, worldwide. Certainly one of the greatest in France. Everything she's good in. And this film really does rest on her because it follows her through these three different time periods. And I think I connected with it emotionally more than his other films, even though it is formal. It has, like you said, a formal aesthetic. To me, it also the fact that it's about fear and anxiety, which spoiler alert, I cope with a lot of anxiety issues myself, so I really related with that. And this idea that you could let anxiety hold you back from doing the things that what you'll really regret at the end of your life is the things you didn't do because you were too fearful or too anxious. And in her case, that was like to explore love, right? And so
Hmm.
I thought that was really beautiful. And to me, the ending was just devastating. Like I had tears running down my face. I
Hmm.
just thought what happens at the end, which I won't get into, is really devastating. So it is,
Yeah.
it is a longer film and it does take some patience to see where it's going. So just be warned of that. It's going to take a while to get into it, but so you need to be patient while you're watching it. Beautifully shot as well.
Yeah, it's
Gosh,
totally worth it. Yeah.
yeah.
Every frame is gorgeous. Like you said, the performances are wonderful. And the way it shifts through different registers, I think is really, really well handled because this movie has a lot of different tones to it and it really
Yeah.
takes you on a fun, interesting ride. And I'll say like the last portion of it, the last timeline we see like set in the present day, George McKay's character there is like one of the scariest villains or characters, that I've seen in any movie of the year. I was really
Hmm.
more tense during that than just about any horror movie I watched all year.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was fantastic, and like you said, I was really affected by the ending as well. I think it's a really great film about like this sounds corny, but the power of emotions and, the necessity of them. And because she has this push and pull with like, should I, get this procedure done or should I not? Like, what do emotions add to my life? What does it mean to be human without emotions? And so I
Yeah.
just thought that was really, really well handled because that's something that could very quickly become like sickly sweet or corny or what have you. But
No, it doesn't go
um,
there.
yeah,
And
it's
I think
very,
it's
very
also a
well
critique on
done.
technology and where our society is going. Ironically,
Hmm.
with coupled with Alien, it's a critique of AI and this thing of living in some kind of society where we don't have anything to fear anymore because everything is done for us and we don't really have to think about anything and everything. And they are able to remove all your bad past trauma from you, so you have no trauma, so you just walk around like a clean slate. And do we really want that? Do we want to be those people? And so I think there's a lot of good philosophical underpinnings there. There's a scene where her character is an actress and she is acting against a green screen. And it's very funny, actually. It's kind of a funny scene, and it correlates with a movie we're going to be reviewing a little bit later. Do not expect too much from the end of the world, which also has these critiques of these kind of like, artificial uh,
Production
artificial.
methods. And,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it's a really good film. I recommend folks check it out. It's on Criterion and elsewhere. It's won a ton of awards earlier in the year, so it's definitely one to check out. And George McKay continuing to be a really interesting young actor to watch, I think.
Hmm. He has a lot of range. I really appreciated that in this movie. Like he goes
Hmm.
through, Leah also has as well, but like George really shows, a very
Oh yeah,
dynamic range in this
he's like
film. It's
handsome and
fantastic.
dashing in the first sequence, and then that one you're talking
Hmm.
about. I mean, he's scary. He's scarier than almost anything we're going to talk about any horror movie
Yeah,
we're
he's
reviewing. So
supremely off-putting in a, very good way, like I
yeah.
guess.
Okay. So 4 stars
So,
for me on that one. So we
me
should move
too.
on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next film is Cuckoo, which is the story of a young woman named Gretchen, played by Hunter Schafer, who moves to a resort in the German Alps with her family after her parents are hired to construct another resort. So Gretchen's mother has passed away, and she struggles to connect with her new mother and her stepsister. And she ends up taking a job at this resort because she just needs a way to kill time, basically, and make a couple extra bucks. And then some strange and startling events begin to unfold that put Gretchen and her family in danger. And so she tries to, escape, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's basically her trying to get out of this resort that has, it's more than meets the eye, as with any horror movie like this, it is. But I thought the central conceit was like, I don't want to spoil it, because it is kind of cloaked at first, like you're not meant to know right off the bat in the film. But it's fun. I just feel like it never really follows through in a, very satisfying way. Like
Hmm.
I feel like it was pretty on the nose and just like, I got to the end and I was like, okay, yeah. And what about it? You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
like I thought it was a good performance from Hunter Schafer, and like that's really the highlight of the film. I think it's just watching her performance, and it's her first like this was actually her first role in a feature film. They shot this prior to Hunger Games or anything, so she had only been in Euphoria prior to this. So definitely her first horror film, and she does a great job. And I think, if you like Hunter, that's enough reason to go see the movie, but I wouldn't expect it to blow your socks off. I think it's fine, is
Yeah.
my verdict.
Yeah, I give it 2.5 stars. I also think it's fine. I get scared pretty easily, as anyone who sees horror movies with me can attest to, and I'm like jumping around in my chair. I get jumpy. I didn't even jump once, I don't think, in this movie. If I remember, I don't remember jumping much, at least. I was actually confused. We saw it together, and a few times I had to, at the end of the movie, I was like, wait, so what happened there? Because I felt that then it just didn't all come together. And it's not just that it wasn't coherent. It just kind of, like you said, there wasn't a lot of there. And I did feel that the setting was really cool idea, like this idea of putting something in the German, in the in the German Alps, and having all these people, but then they didn't make use of it. I thought, wouldn't, because the filmmaker's German, right? And I thought, wouldn't it have been cool if it was like that movie we saw? Was that the first Omen where she can't speak Italian and everyone else is
Yeah,
speaking Italian, or one of the Dario Argento movies where they have Jennifer Carp or Jennifer Connelly is the only one that can speak English? Like, wouldn't it have been more fun if she was there and she can't understand what people are saying? I just kept thinking of ways to make this more interesting than what they did. I
yeah,
agree with you. Hunter Schafer's good. I thought Dan Stevens was really good, but he's like almost in a different movie than everyone else. He's in this
yeah,
campy B horror movie, and then Hunter Schafer's playing it straight. And I was like,
yeah.
"Do you both know? Did you guys get the same script?"
Yeah,
So,
that's a really great way to put it. I totally agree with that assessment. And I also agree with, the underutilization of the setting. Like you said, it's a really cool place. Like we get some shots of the forest and everything, but it also never really feels like, ah, yes, this is the German Alps. It also kind of feels like it could be any forest in the Northwest or something like
it
that.
almost makes you wonder if it actually was filmed there, which I think it was because it
Right?
premiered at the Berlin Film Festival. So
Yeah, I
it,
wouldn't be
it
surprised
seems
to
a
find
little
that.
disappointing. Like when they shot the Omen, was it the Omen movie where they shot it in Italy
First
first time?
Omen.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but you felt like you were, you want more of a feeling of that sense of place and
Yeah,
that
it really could have
isolation.
been anywhere. And
Yeah, with
even within the
trees.
film,
Yeah.
it's not just like how they shot it, but even within the narrative itself and everything, they just don't it's not a factor at all. The only way that it comes into play at all is just that it's a foreign place for Hunter's character. Outside of
Hmm.
that, it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
It's really disappointing. Like they speak, 3 lines of German in the beginning, and it's kind of
And
played
that's
off like
it.
a
And then
joke, and
everyone
then
speaks English the rest of the movie.
everyone
Nobody
speaks
else.
English, yeah,
Nobody.
and it's
Yeah.
it's very disappointing in that regard.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it, but I certainly didn't love it.
Yeah. And I do think the story is almost borderline nonsensical slash incoherent, but that's
Yeah,
that's
and it's
that's my
not
whole other thing.
satisfying at the end. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try not to spoil anything, but it just feels like there are lots of different turns this could have taken to make it more,
Mhm.
out there and fun. And like, it's a horror movie and not one that's, trying to be like Rosemary's Baby. So I think it should try to have more fun with itself. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
do the crazy, whatever. It never feels like it gets out there enough. It never breaks out of its own shell.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, needs to have I think a lot of horror movies these days have that issue though. They're not willing to just be a little bit wild, and they feel a little too carefully programmed often. Even something like this, which I don't think was like, I think it's actually done well at the box office, but I don't think it was a huge budget or anything. So, but Hunter Schafer definitely one to watch. I think I'd like to see her in more films. Okay, so our last film, speaking of wild, is Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World from Romanian auteur Radu Jude. Radu Jude is a very interesting filmmaker that probably mostly only cinephiles know about. I've seen three of his previous films: The Happiest Girl in the World, Bad Luck Banging, or Loony Porn. Yes, that's the full title of that one. And I Do Not Care If We Go Down in History as Barbarians. His newest film is a 3 hour comedy, and that is how it is listed in every setting place I looked as a comedy about an overworked production assistant who drives around Bucharest. She's trying to cast a workplace safety video that is being commissioned by a multinational company, which, by the way, is responsible for the injuries of the workers that she's trying to film. So, yes, she's going around to these people who are in some cases paralyzed, some cases have no fingers, and all of them lost or had these disabilities because of the company they worked for. And now the company is trying to shoot a video, basically a PR scheme to say, hey, you should have worn your safety equipment. And they're paying the employees off to do this. And she's just this production assistant who has to get it done. While she's driving around, she stops and meets some people and talks to her mother and takes her mother to a grave site, and that's a whole other sequence. And she also does videos of herself as a alter ego of a kind of disgusting. How would you describe the character, Autumn? I
Yeah,
was trying to
an
think of the
incel, like
yeah, just like a
an
really
angry
disgusting
Redditor.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, an angry guy who puts down women and says misogynistic thing. And it's kind of like a fun video series she does that she thinks, I think, is sort of parody. It's interesting, we watched this one together as well. This one is available online through Mubi and other streaming services. I don't think his best film. It's gotten praise as such, but I think it's a very interesting film, and I definitely think it's important work that Radu Jude is doing. He's obviously very critical of capitalism and kind of the modern state of humanity in general, to be honest. I'm not just say just capitalism. He's pretty much critical of where we're going, which is why it's called Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World. I think he's pointing to the fact that we're just kind of going to fizzle out in this really kind of disgusting, meager way. One of the two interesting sequences in the film, one is a long shot of multiple kind of grave sites that people have put up on this road where many people have been killed over many years and continue to be killed, and no one does anything about it. And this sequence, it's a real road in Romania, I'm guessing, and it just goes on forever in a way that starts to become very startling. I loved that sequence. And then I actually think the end sequence where they're filming the actual video is pretty powerful as well. Tell me what you thought, Autumn.
Yeah, I feel much the same way. I'm a big fan of Radu Jude. I really enjoyed Bad Luck Banging, and also uh,
I
We Will
do
Not
not
Go Down in
care if we go
History.
down in history as
Yeah,
barbarians. Yeah, I know.
that one. He always has long titles, doesn't he?
Titles. I know.
But I really enjoy his works. This one didn't quite grip me the way a lot of his other ones do, but I also feel like on a rewatch, I'm sure I would get more out of it. It's not as if it's lacking in meaning or anything because it's not. I just feel like, for the 3 hour runtime, I guess I maybe expected it to be a little denser thematically, but at the same time, I have to applaud him for, the choice that he makes by making us watch this lady drive around, wasting 16 hours of her day just driving. Because, it's like Jean Dielman, where it's like the banality of this and like, again, do not expect too much from the end of the world. Like, what if we're already here and this is it? You're just going to be driving around the rest of your life and that's that.
Right. Yeah.
She's
Making
just like,
videos on TikTok that are
right?
just,
Like you're almost
completely
a gig
pointless.
worker or something. And yeah. So I think it's great and like you said, important work. I really did enjoy, the formal choices that he made in here, like the black and white versus the color, and how he paces scenes, like you said, the really long scene of all those gravestones and color and everything. And he completely cuts out the sound for that section, which I thought was a wonderful touch. And the thing about that too is like, the characters in the film even say there are many, many more graves than the ones that he shows us. We only see a couple dozen, but they said there's like over 600. So it really does drive home, just how bad this problem is. And then you can kind of tie that to a lot of the other problems that arise in the film, and you see that maybe they're all, stemming from the same place, right? Call it, just capitalism or what have you, but the world is kind of taking a dark turn and we're losing ourselves to the system rather.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed like again I'm conflicted I guess on the 3 hour runtime, but I do think it's very well paced at the same time.
I do think
So
it could have cut some of the scenes of her driving. I mean, we got the point.
mhm.
I mean, after like the 10th long driving sequence where she's literally just driving, there's nothing else happening. Because some of the
Yeah,
stuff where she's driving, it's kind of interesting because she interacts, man, Romanian drivers, whew, yeah, talk
like
about bad
crazy.
tempers.
Yeah.
But so there's, I don't know, it kind of, it goes back and forth for me. I still recommend it. We are running out of time, but it's a nice antidote to Alien, if you will, because he's
Yeah,
really pointing out exactly what's wrong with a movie like that, a corporate product
absolutely.
that's just been homogenized beyond recognition. So, well, we have to go. We're past time. Thank you, Autumn, for being on. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Have a great day. And don't forget, watch great movies. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.